Sound Speeds, and welcome back to the Sound Speeds podcast. Now, I'm going to be on location this week and covering a couple of topics that deal with being away from a studio or in a less than ideal environment. So without further delay, let's get into our first topic. For our first topic, I thought we would discuss how to make a reverberant room sound better without doing anything physically to the room. There's actually a few things you can do to get better sound. Now, this room is the same room that I was in initially when I moved out of my house. And new studio version number 3 was when I moved into this studio. As a matter of fact, that was where my studio was. So if you can imagine my acoustic treatment, all that kind of stuff, my desk was there and I used to face this way to do all my videos. And you can see that exact same corner and everything in the video where I talk about the Atom Audio A7Xs that I got. Now, here I am in a very untreated room. After I moved out, this room here just basically became an echo chamber. It's no longer a studio. It's now just a room full of open walls, open space, and it's now reverberant. Now, I'm also pretty far away from the camera. If I were to put it into words, I'd say probably about 4 feet away from the camera. So if you want to make your voice sound better, here's something you can do. First of all, I want you to notice that my noise floor is practically non-existent. The first thing you need to do if you want to sound better is get rid of the background noise. This room is quiet. Listen. Nothing. This is one of the reasons I love to shoot in this room back when I lived here. Now, the very first thing you got to keep in mind is that reverberations coming off the walls are going to be louder the louder you are. So if you want to sound better and eliminate some of these reverberations, very first thing to do is to drop the volume of your voice a little bit. Now, you still got to make sure that your voice is going to sound clear and is going to sound the same way as it was before. But now, because I'm not pushing as much power into my voice, it's not traveling all the way to the walls anymore and coming back. It's still doing it, but it's not nearly as loud as it was before. So the microphone is not going to be picking up on the sound the same way as it was before. Now, keep in mind that when you raise your volume, and I am compensating by raising up my volume in post to even out the volume level to where it was when I was louder at the beginning of this video. Now, when I put more power into my voice, I'm doing one thing, and that is basically increasing the volume of air I'm pushing out. But the highs and the mids in my voice are going to be traveling in a straight line, basically straight out of my mouth in the direction I'm pointing. But the bass is going to go in all directions. So when I lower my volume a little bit, the bass is not being pushed out into the world nearly as much as it was before. The mids and highs could very easily be tamed by EQing them down. But when you lower your volume, you're not pushing out the bass nearly as far anymore. So one of the things you want to do is try to deepen your voice ever so slightly. You don't want to sound, like you're trying to change your voice or anything like that. You just don't want to be as high. Like I was way up here before. What I did as soon as I dropped my volume is I lowered my voice a little bit. And you can still keep your energy level just fine, just by keeping your voice a little bit lower and just, keeping your same energy level. Now, I'm not going to sound as manic. I'm not going to sound as crazy as I was before, but you can tell from the post-processing that I'm doing, which is essentially just, at this point, raising the volume a little bit to where it was at the beginning. By doing that step alone, I'm cutting out on some of the reflections, because the more I push volume out into this room, the more it's going to be bouncing off the walls. And it's not going to have the power coming back as it was before. Now you may say, but isn't it all kind of even? If you're louder, it bounces off and the reflections are louder, versus if you're talking quieter and then you bounce off the back walls, it's going to come back quieter. Yes and no. Keep in mind, signal to noise ratio. If my signal is up here and my noise is down here, then the background noise level is going to be basically staying the same. Now, if I completely eliminate the background noise, like for example, listen right now. Did you hear the background noise get completely eliminated right there? By doing that right there, I have basically taken my signal that was really loud before and my noise floor that was here. I've now eliminated the background noise And now because I'm speaking lower, my volume is now here. Now, even if the background noise was still there was still enough of a signal to noise ratio there to still play and still work for us in our favor. If the background noise was louder, if the air conditioner was on, if there was vehicles outside, if there was activity going on in the next room, a TV or something, it would not be the same situation. This only works in a completely dead, quiet environment like the one I'm in right now. By eliminating the background noise, by lowering my volume and deepening my voice ever so slightly to still sound a little bit, still sound clear, what I'm basically doing is taking out some of the reflections in this room. Now, the mids and highs are still directional. They're still going to bounce off the back walls. The bass in my voice, because I'm lowering my volume, is not going to be going out nearly as far as it was when I was louder, because I'm pushing, the same volume out in all directions. But when I'm louder, the mids and highs are going to be more directional and reflecting off the walls more so, as is the bass. But now that I'm speaking quieter, most of what you're going to be hearing is going to be in the reflections of this room is going to be the mids and highs, not the bass anymore. So to curb the mids and highs ever so slightly, since we've already eliminated our background noise, one of the things we can also do, if you want to, is add a slight de-esser. You can also, if you have isotope or something like that, you can do a de-reverb, or you can even knock out a little bit of the reflections using a few of the other tools that I don't know the names of. But I do know it's possible. But if you just want to stick to easy stuff, one of the things that you might think is, okay, well, maybe if I just add a gate, or if I add some sort of a noise elimination process. Well, keep in mind the reflections are still going to be there. What they are is going to be reflecting off the back walls. And because it's reflecting off of a wall, it's going to be in lower detail by the time it comes back to the camera. And because we're talking about higher frequencies, they could be inverted in polarity or out of phase basically to my regular audio, which is the microphone pointing straight at my mouth. It could also be that the lower detail from it bouncing off of a wall is going to pull down the quality of the audio that I am speaking. Because if it was just my voice, the detail that you're hearing is going to be optimal detail. But when you start to mix in the diffused reflection sound off the walls, you start to add that into the regular signal, add in a touch of phasing, you're going to end up with some issues in the quality of the sound, that's coming straight down the barrel, which is my voice in this case, coming straight from my mouth to the camera, 4 feet away. But that reflection off the back wall is going to be potentially phasing, because, that phasing is going to occur because you have a crest and you have a trough. But then if it's out of phase, it's going through a trough and then a crest. And this actually happens based on the wavelength of the certain volume of the sound frequencies. And every frequency, it could be that a sound wave is this big or this big or this big, depending on the frequency. And I have a video where I talk about how to calculate the wavelength of each frequency. But if the distance between my voice to that wall, it is going to be phasing my voice here directly line of sight to camera, then there's going to be a potential issue there. And there's nothing I can do about it really, except treat this room. Now, the mids and highs, right now that I am pointing my mouth directly at the camera, if I wanted to spot treat something to try to get rid of some of these reflections, I would do it in the direction my voice is facing. So I would put something more behind the camera. Believe it or not, if I did that in this room, it would take out a lot of the reverberations in here. Even though I'm not doing anything to anything else around here, my voice is basically bouncing off of that wall, then this and this and this. It's bouncing around this room, kind of like a pool table. Like if you hit a cue ball and it bounces off all the different walls, that's kind of what my voice is doing. The mids and highs are directional. So as I talk to the camera, I'm directing my voice this way. It's bouncing around the room, and then it's eventually going back into the microphone. But if I were to take it and right behind the camera, which is the direction my mouth is pointed, build a wall there, of acoustic treatment, or even hang up a couple of towels and moving blankets and things like that to make a few inches of thickness, that is going to tame the reflections of this room quite a bit, believe it or not. So what I basically did from the very beginning here is I lowered my voice and my volume, and this only worked because I'm in a dead quiet room. I lowered my volume from a louder volume to a quieter volume, and then I deepened my voice a little bit. And by deepening the voice, I'm basically pushing more bass out into the room, which is going to kind of even out my voice and level a little bit by the time it gets into the camera. And this is just a DJI Osmo Action 4 camera, little tiny microphone someplace on there. And it's by no means as good of a quality as any standalone handheld microphone is going to be. So what I'm saying right now on this camera, and notice I'm not monitoring it live. I just happen to know what it's going to be doing. But all I did in post to the way you're hearing it right now is I dropped my volume to get less reflections and less energy bouncing off of various different walls, because every time you double your distance away from a source, it basically is going to drop by about 6 decibels. My voice isn't going to be bouncing off of nearly as many walls when it starts at a quieter volume. Okay, and then the other thing I did was, in addition to dropping my volume, I deepened my voice. And if you want to use a de-esser and try to help dial in on a good frequency that is the frequency that you're looking for, one of the ways you do it is by boosting the level by like 20 decibels and sweeping slowly until you found the frequency. Then you can kind of select the width in the Q of it in order to find exactly what that frequency is, that's the harsh frequency. And from there, go from 20 decibels down and lower it. That's going to take that out, or at least reduce it, however you want to play it. But anyway, hopefully this is giving you some insight as to some stuff that you can do if you want to make your audio sound better. Sure, you can do noise reduction and stuff like that in the background. Even something as simple as using the Waves NS1 plugin, which you can get for $30 sometimes, or the Clarity VX, even the regular Clarity VX, that's going to work well, and you can get that for 30 or 40 bucks too. Those kinds of things will tame a lot of the background reflections, and I'm doing that right now. As I talked about it, I basically engaged them so that way you can hear what it would sound like. So you can treat
when you're
background
recording
noise
most sounds,
if you want to, and that's going to give you some good sound as well.
Most artificial sounds that you are going to hear when you're recording are usually deeper sounds, more like air conditioning or cars that are a farther distance that are not able to push themselves through the walls, because the walls are going to stop most of the mids and highs. You just got through hearing the trailer behind me turn on because it's a refrigerated trailer, also known as a reefer, don't ask. But anyway, the reason I wanted to do this as a second part of this video as kind of since we were talking about noise earlier, I thought we would go ahead and talk about noise again, but something you could do in a noisier type environment. Right now, this rumble that's going on is quite a bit deeper than my actual voice. My voice is higher pitched, and it's going directly line of sight to this DJI Action 4 camera again. And it is out of sight, not out of sight, but it's too far away. The camera is too far away. So if I want to try to get better sound, as opposed to the sound that you're hearing right now, which is where the noise level is here, my volume is here, I have a couple of different choices. I can either raise up my volume and scream at you, but why in the world do I want to do that for my recording? I could do that to push the signal even higher, but that's dumb. The obvious choice would be if I can put the register of my voice in a frequency range other than that reefer back there. And in my case, it's not that big of a deal because I don't have a whole lot of bass in my voice. So I can very easily make my voice higher pitched and you're still going to buy it. But what if I don't want to do that? My other option is to talk at a normal, deeper type voice like this, but the frequencies of my voice, and if you happen to have a deeper voice, this is going to be something you run into, is going to be competing with that. Well, I've already pointed out that I'm very far away from my microphone. So what I'm going to do is get closer. You normally hear me say back off on the camera, but I'm going to actually get closer. And when I get closer,
Right now, I am quite literally touching my finger to my nose, and the camera is that far away because it's extremely wide. Now, when you are using a wide angle lens like this, it's going to distort. My face is, I'm sure, distorting all over the place. It's going to be less distorted if you're in the middle of the frame as opposed to the edges. If you're on the sides of the edge of a wide lens, like an action cam like this, when it's like 4mm or whatever this thing is, it's crazy. I mean, you can literally see straight off to the side over here and then beyond. I mean, it's like almost 180 degrees. The thing is almost able to see straight off to the sides, which is insane. But right now, if you are in an environment like this, where it's loud, because that refrigerated trailer back there is on, what you can do in post is sample the background noise by going quiet. Okay, now by going into post, what you can do is use that, you highlight that area of the video, or the audio in this case, and then create a noise profile for that. And what the noise profile will do in your DAW, if you're using something like Reaper or, you know, the Adobe, most of these programs have an ability, even Audacity has the ability for you to create a noise profile and eliminate that. But what you might end up with is a couple little bitty outliers, little bitty, pops that are around there a little bit in the background noise. And you want to try to get rid of those. So you want to use something like the Waves NS1 is what I normally use. It's like a $30 VST that you can put into Reaper. And what that allows you to do is just tame off any of the little minor pops and crinkles, digital type noise distortions and stuff like that in the background to eliminate the background noise. Now, if you wanted to, for extra credit, you could take a sample of the background noise before you, or in any kind of environment, and then replace it in the background, so that way it's not completely dead quiet if you want to. Because right now, you would believe that the background noise is completely quiet, but it's also going to be a little more comforting to people if they hear a little bit of background noise in the background. Now, in my case, I am literally 10 inches away from the camera and the microphone that's on it, and my voice is higher. So I can easily start to bring in a little bit of the hum, a little bit of the background noise or something like that, that whatever I wanted to do to make it sound more like it looks, because you're obviously seeing that I'm in a truck, and it would not be that hard to imagine, or that far-fetched to imagine, that it's a little bit noisy. But let's just say you wanted to try to sell the idea that you were not at your studio, but you're still in a quiet environment. You can eliminate the background noise. But then you have to speak up over the background noise in volume. So if the background noise is here, you want to speak higher to elevate. Great, hit the thing. So you want to be able to hear a signal, the sound that you care about, much higher than your background noise. And if the background noise is that loud, you have to speak up over it. Now, people may say, I don't want to sound like I'm yelling in my recording, and that's totally fine. But keep in mind, the closer you are to your microphone, the better it's going to be at getting rid of that background noise. Right now, I'm pretty close. If I get much closer, it's going to go really crazy on camera. But I will do it just to show you that if you get even closer, right now, the air is being let out of the seat, so I'm holding myself up with my right arm. But if I want to, I am literally now a fist distance away from the lens. And I'm sure my face is extremely distorted because it's a very wide angle lens. The bill of my hat is almost touching the lens, as a matter of fact. And trying to keep my face squared to the camera so it doesn't look really distorted is going to be awkward. But my voice is basically maximum volume to where it would normally, where you would want to hopefully get an ideal signal compared to the background noise. But even then, it's not going to be ideal. The best thing to do is to eliminate your background noises. In the case of being in this truck, I can go back there and turn off the reefer. I'll do that now. Okay, it just cycled down as you heard. This is a Thermo King, by the way, and so when there's a mode on it called Cycle Sentry, which allows you to cycle it once it turns basically to the temperature it's set to,
then it will shut itself completely off, which is the way it is right now. So that way it's insulated, it's going to hold the temperature just fine. And it's a 3 zone, so it's not like a typical one. It's got 3 different zones of temperature. Not like you care or anything like that, but I'm vamping on because I'm showing you that even though right now I'm about 2 feet away from the lens, you're able to hear me just fine right now in a quiet environment without any noise reduction. The sound quality is going to be much better, even if it's in a non-ideal situation with a non-ideal mic like that one right there. I don't have to speak up. I don't have to speak in any particular way. All I am doing is talking to you normal. And depending on the acoustics, if you wanted to, you could play with it a little bit in post. But here's the reason why you don't want to use EQ as a first option to remove the background noise when something like an air conditioning unit or the reefer in this case was running. It's because if you start to mess with EQ, all you're doing is pulling out frequencies of within a certain range. All the frequencies. If my voice or anything else is in that frequency range, also it's eliminating that as well. Versus establishing a noise profile in the background and then telling the computer to eliminate that. It's going to do a better job of eliminating those frequencies in a wider range, in a more narrow range, and basically just from that sample, it's going to eliminate that from the background noise. You may want to add a little bit more back into post if you want to, and you have that option. You may choose to just make it dead quiet. Or if I go quiet right now, you could use this background noise and add it into whatever you're recording. So the same rule of thumb always applies. Lower your background noise and have the loudest possible signal over that, or at least up to a certain point when you're not yelling. Make it an adequate level, something that's going to sound good. Then treat the acoustics in your background. So that way you can try to eliminate anything that's reflecting sound back towards your microphone. Same rules always apply. So there you go. So there you have it. Another episode of the Sound Speeds podcast. Done. Complete. In the can. However you want to word it. And sorry, the sound is a little bit less than ideal in this situation. The camera is about 6 inches away from the front windshield of this truck. So it's going to sound like a little bit of garbage. Sorry about that. But anyway, hopefully you've been able to deal with this episode. If you're watching at this point, then obviously you were able to deal with it. And I very much appreciate you doing just that. So thanks for tuning in this episode of the Sound Speeds podcast, and I will see you in 2 weeks with another episode. Have a question you'd like answered or want to add something? Be sure to write it in the comment section down below. You can also make a suggestion for future topics of discussion. Again, comment section down below, or you can email me at soundspeeds@yahoo.com. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss out on future sound advice.